You don't deserve the discount. Disrespect that sparked a brotherhood response. It was supposed to be a simple stop, just 20 worth of gas to get to his VA medical appointment on the other side of town. Sergeant First Class Marcus Mack Rohr, 68, a retired Army Special Forces veteran, carefully pulled his adapted hand-controlled van into the Patriot fuel station. A large red sign out front boasted, "Veterans receive 10 ccs off per gallon every day." For Mac, that small discount wasn't about the money. It was about recognition. Inside the store, the young clerk barely looked up from his phone as Mac approached the counter with his VA card in hand. "I'd like to put 20 on bump 3, Mac said calmly, "and I'd like the veteran discount, please." The clerk, a skinny kid with Ayerbu Mac, frowned. "That's not what your sign says." Well, the insult hit harder than expected. Mac wasn't there asking for charity. He was a veteran who'd given decades to this country, now facing public dismissal by someone who had no idea what that service had cost. His voice low and steady, Mac replied, "Son, but Kyle wasn't interested in fairness or respect." "Look, he said, waving him off. "Get $1." Mac's hands trembled, not from weakness, but from controlled anger. He'd faced down war zones. He could handle this. But something inside told him, "This time you..." He reached for an old government-issue satellite phone, the one with a number saved for situations like this. Because sometimes standing up for what's right starts with one quiet call and ends with a convoy operation. Max sat in his van, gripping the steering wheel tighter than necessary, his knuckles pale against the worn leather. The pump clicked as the final drops of the meager $5 worth of fuel trickled into the tank. It was just enough to reach the VA clinic. Maybe. But it wasn't the near-empty gas tank that made his chest ache. It was the look on that young clerk's face. The smirk, the casual cruelty, the unspoken judgment that Mac, with his trembling hands and old veteran cap, wasn't worth the respect owed to those who served. He stared straight ahead for a moment, breathing deeply, trying to let it go like he had so many times before. But something inside him refused. Maybe it was the years of sacrifice, the scars, both visible and not. Or maybe it was simply the fact that some lines shouldn't be crossed. He reached into the small compartment between the seats and pulled out an old, heavy device, his government-issued satellite phone. It looked ancient compared to today's sleek devices, but this one wasn't for calls to friends or family. It had one button, one program number labeled Watchtower. That number connected directly to the Special Operations Command's Welfare and Emergency Liaison, a highly discreet unit reserved for critical welfare cases involving retired Special Forces personnel. Mac had carried the phone for over a decade, unused just in case. Today, just in case had arrived. He hesitated. Was this too much? Was it really worth calling in SOCOM over a fuel discount and a rude clerk? Then he remembered the young man's mocking tone. Maybe just get $1's worth and move along. And the heat of humiliation rose again. He pressed the button. The line connected instantly. A calm, clear voice answered. "Watchtower. Identify." "Rohr or Marcus," Max said, voice firm. "Sierra Foxtrot 9 requesting welfare check and assistance." He gave his location. Patriot Fuel, corner of Elm and Main, denied advertised veterans discount, subjected to public disrespect by civilian employee. Fuel critical for medical transport to VA clinic. There was a brief pause. Then the voice responded, crisp and unwavering. "Understood, SFC Rohr. SOCOM Protocol 7A initiated. Local liaison element dispatched. ETA 10 minutes. Maintain situational awareness. Remain on site." Mac nodded silently and ended the call. He stared at the phone in his hand for a moment, unsure whether to feel regret or relief. But deep down, he knew this wasn't just about fuel. It was about dignity. He hadn't asked for praise or applause, just to be treated fairly, to be seen. And now he had chosen not to let the insults stand. He sat quietly in his van, watching the clerk inside the store still flipping through his phone, oblivious to what was coming. The minutes ticked by. At 5 minutes, nothing. At 7, still quiet. Mac adjusted his side mirrors and noticed the usual hum of traffic around the corner. Then, at minute 9, he heard it, the low, unmistakable growl of high-performance engines. Not the hollow rev of sports cars, but the deep, controlled roar of purpose-built machines. Two matte black Chevrolet Suburbans pulled into view. They didn't slow. They moved like wolves through the intersection and swept into the gas station lot with silent precision. The vehicles blocked both exits, forming a perfect tactical perimeter. No lights, no sirens, just presence. 4 men stepped out, wearing jeans, tactical boots, and dark jackets. Their eyes were hidden behind sunglasses, their movements calm but calculated. Mac didn't need insignias to know who they were. He had once moved the same way. These were operators, brothers. The tallest one walked straight to Mac's window and tapped once. Mac rolled it down. "Sergeant First Class Rohr?" the man asked. "Yes." "Master Chief Thompson, Naval Special Warfare," he said, offering a respectful nod. "We received your call, heard you had trouble getting a fill-up and encountered some unacceptable treatment." Mac swallowed hard and managed a slight smile. "Something like that." "Well," Thompson said, signaling to one of his men who had already begun filling Mac's tank, "let's make it right." Another SEAL strode into the convenience store without a word, military payment device in hand. Mac watched as Kyle's smirk vanished. And for the first time that day, Mac didn't feel small. He felt remembered. Inside the gas station, the atmosphere shifted in an instant. Kyle, the young clerk who had mocked Mac just minutes earlier, froze mid-scroll on his phone and as the Navy SEAL walked through the door. The man didn't raise his voice, didn't make a scene. He didn't have to. His calm, focused presence said everything. He walked straight to the counter, planting the encrypted military payment device on it with quiet finality. "This station offers a veteran's discount on fuel, correct?" he asked, voice smooth but firm. Kyle, pale now, nodded quickly, his previous bravado dissolving. "Good," the SEAL replied. "You're going to process a full tank for Sergeant First Class Marcus Rohr with the maximum applicable discount. No car wash, no soda, just gas. And then you and I are going to speak with your manager about your interpretation of fine print and your treatment of veterans." Kyle swallowed hard. Yes, sir." At that moment, the station manager, Mr. Henderson, emerged from the back room, alarmed by the commotion and the 2 black SUVs still idling outside. His confusion deepened when he caught sight of the SEAL inside and the other team members positioned strategically around the station. "What's going on here?" Henderson asked, stepping cautiously into the front of the store. The second SEAL, Master Chief Thompson, met him at the door. "Mr. Henderson?" he asked, extending a hand. "Yes, that's me. And you are?" "Master Chief Thompson, U.S. Navy. We're here on behalf of Sergeant First Class Rohr, one of this nation's most decorated Special Forces veterans. Your employee denied him a publicly advertised fuel discount and subjected him to public humiliation. That's not acceptable." Henderson looked rattled. I didn't know anything about this." "Kyle, what happened?" Kyle stammered, suddenly unable to meet anyone's eyes. "He didn't buy the car wash or the soda, so I told him that the discount didn't apply." Thompson finished for him, his voice steel. Despite there being no visible signage requiring those conditions, despite him showing valid veteran identification, despite him calmly requesting only what was promised. Henderson paled further. "Let me be very clear," Thompson continued. "What happened here today is not just a policy misunderstanding. It's a moral failure and a PR disaster waiting to happen." Henderson nodded quickly. "You're absolutely right. I'm so sorry. I'll make it right. You'll start," Thompson said, "by issuing Sergeant First Class Rohr a full apology, ensuring he receives a full tank of fuel, free of charge, and honoring the advertised veteran discount for all future patrons, no strings attached." "I will. I absolutely will," Henderson promised, already moving toward the register. "Kyle, finish the transaction now, and then we're going to have a serious conversation about respect." As the SEALs watched, Kyle completed the payment, this time without protest. One SEAL stood silently behind him, ensuring nothing else went wrong. Meanwhile, outside, Max sat quietly in his van, watching the exchange through the window. He could feel the emotional weight lifting. For once, someone had stood up for him, not with slogans or empty gestures, but with action, accountability, and presence. Henderson stepped outside a moment later, accompanied by Master Chief Thompson. "Sergeant Rohr," Henderson began, voice humbled, "I owe you a personal and professional apology. What you experienced at my station was unacceptable. The discount will be honored correctly from now on for every veteran, and I'd like to offer you free fuel for the next year as a gesture of our gratitude and regret." Mac was stunned. "That's unnecessary but appreciated." "Also," Henderson added, glancing back at the store, "Kyle will undergo retraining, or he'll be replaced." Master Chief Thompson nodded in approval. "That's a start." Then he handed Mac a small card. "This is a direct line to our regional veteran support network. If anything like this ever happens again, anywhere, you call. We don't let our own stand alone." Mac looked at the card, then at Thompson. His voice caught slightly when he said, "Thank you, all of you." "Just making sure the Brotherhood is looked after, Sergeant," Thompson replied, stepping back. With that, the SEALs returned to their vehicles, their mission complete. They didn't linger. They didn't take credit. Within seconds, the black Suburbans were gone, leaving behind a full tank, a humbled manager, a silent clerk, and a veteran whose dignity had been fiercely, quietly restored. As the last of the black Suburbans disappeared around the corner, the silence that followed felt like a cleansing wave. Max sat quietly in his van for a few moments, one weathered hand resting on the steering wheel, the other gently touching the crisp support card Master Chief Thompson had given him. He wasn't just thinking about the fuel that now filled his tank. He was thinking about everything that had just unfolded, and how quickly dignity, once stripped, had been restored with absolute certainty. A part of him still couldn't believe it. Navy SEALs had shown up, not for battle, but for him. Not because he called in favors or demanded anything, but because someone finally listened. Someone respected the quiet weight veterans carry, the unspoken burden of service, sacrifice, and aging in a world that often forgets. He looked down at the gas gauge, full. But it wasn't just the fuel that filled him, it was something deeper. A sense of being seen, valued, vindicated. The humiliation he'd felt when that clerk called him Pops and mocked his need had left a sharp sting. But now that wound had been met with overwhelming affirmation. You matter. Your service matters, and no one gets to treat you like you don't belong. Driving toward the VA clinic, Mac noticed how the city looked different. Quieter somehow, more respectful. It wasn't the streets that had changed. It was him. His pride had been bruised earlier, but now it surged, not out of arrogance, but in knowing that brotherhood still existed. He thought about the other veterans out there, those who might have just walked away or felt too tired to fight for what they'd earned. He hoped they'd hear his story. He hoped they'd know it was okay to stand tall again. By the time he reached the clinic parking lot, Mac had made up his mind. He wouldn't just tell his doctor about the checkup. He'd tell him everything. The insult, the call, the response. Because stories like this weren't just about gas stations. They were about identity, about never letting quiet heroes be overlooked. Sometimes the deepest battles aren't fought with weapons, but with dignity. Respect isn't just about grand gestures. It's about everyday moments when people choose kindness over power, understanding over pride. Sergeant Mac's story reminds us that every veteran carries history beneath their scars, and even the smallest slight can reopen old wounds. If this story moved you, type "respect always" in the comments. Share it with someone who needs reminding that honor doesn't fade with age. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel, because we'll keep telling these stories until every hero knows they're never standing alone.